I woke up with a gasp, my back soaked in cold sweat. The shriek of tires still echoed in my ears, the blinding glare of headlights flashing behind my eyes. The truck barreling toward me, and in the driver's seat, Julian Croft's monstrous grin. That was the last thing I remembered. "Sir, are you all right, Mr. Shaw?" A waiter was carefully handing me a glass of ice water. Only then did I realize where I was. The annual Vance Enterprises Gala. The light from the crystal chandeliers stabbed at my eyes. A crowd of business luminaries gathered around the champagne tower, their air-kissing and polite inquiries a symphony of insincerity. The scene was terrifyingly familiar. "What's today's date?" I grabbed the waiter's wrist, my voice a raw whisper. "It's June 18th, sir. The party's celebrating your first wedding anniversary with Ms. Vance." The waiter looked startled. I let go, stumbling back a step and bumping into a cocktail table behind me. The clinking of glasses drew a few curious glances. Reborn? Had something so absurd actually happened to me? I fumbled for my phone. The lock screen read June 18th, 2022. 3 years ago, it was indeed our first anniversary, and exactly 1 month before Julian Croft returned to the States. Memories from my past life flooded back. Eleanor's cold indifference, Julian's insidious manipulations, our daily, soul-crushing arguments, and finally, that accidental car crash. "Caleb, what's wrong? You look pale." A cool, clear voice came from behind me, and my entire body went rigid. I turned slowly. Eleanor Vance was standing right there. A deep crimson mermaid gown clung to her perfect figure, and around her swan-like neck was the diamond necklace I'd spent my entire savings on, the one she'd stopped wearing in her other life. My throat tightened. The woman I once loved down to my bones now filled me with nothing but a chilling exhaustion. "I'm fine. Just tired, I guess." I took half a step back, avoiding the hand she reached out to me. Eleanor's hand hung in the air for a moment, a slight frown creasing her brow. Her eyes scanned my face, as if searching for something. "Why don't you wait for me in the private lounge? I'll be there as soon as I'm done with the guests." She finally withdrew her hand, her tone even. I nodded and turned away. No need to play a part. This time, I wouldn't make the same mistakes. As I moved through the crowd, I caught snippets of whispers. I heard Eleanor's old flame is coming back from London next month. Looks like the trophy husband's fairy tale is about to end. She only married him for his looks. Once she's bored, he's gone. My fists clenched, then slowly relaxed. It didn't matter. This time, I wouldn't give her the chance to hurt me again. In the lounge, I poured myself a whiskey and downed it in one go. The alcohol burned my throat, but did nothing to extinguish the ache in my chest. Even reborn, the memories and the pain were still brutally real. I pulled out my phone and checked the calendar. Julian was due back in mid-July, parachuting into Vance Enterprises as a senior executive. I had to be gone before then. The door opened softly, and Eleanor walked in. She locked it behind her and leaned against the door, watching me in silence. "What is really going on with you?" she asked. I swirled the amber liquid in my glass, avoiding her gaze. "I just think we need to talk." "Talk about what?" "A divorce." The air in the room froze. I waited for her to explode with anger or ridicule, just like she did every time we fought in our past life. But Eleanor just walked over and sat down across from me, her hands folded neatly in her lap. "Why?" "We're not a good match," I said robotically. "You're a rising star in the business world, and I'm just a regular architect. This marriage was a mistake from the start." Eleanor suddenly laughed, a sound laced with an emotion I couldn't decipher. "Since when did you become such a bad liar, Caleb?" She stood up and walked around the coffee table. Before I could react, she grabbed my left hand and pushed up my sleeve. A small, crescent-shaped scar was revealed from a time she'd bitten me in anger back in college. "It really is you," she whispered, her voice trembling. "You came back to—" I looked up in shock, meeting her crimson-rimmed eyes. They were filled with a storm of emotions: regret, pain, ecstatic joy, and a love I hadn't seen in years. "What do you mean?" My voice was dry. Eleanor let go of my hand and walked to the vanity mirror. With her back to me, she slowly lifted her hair, revealing a pale pink scar on the back of her neck, a mark that hadn't existed in our past life. "I got this after you died," she said, her voice terrifyingly calm. "I was holding your ashes and fell down the stairs." She paused. "But now it should be here." She raised her left wrist. The skin was flawless, but she traced a line across it with her right index finger. "I used the letter opener you gave me. I cut my own veins. When I woke up, it was today." My mind went blank. She was reborn, too? And she had killed herself for me? Eleanor turned around, tears now streaming down her face. "Caleb, I swear, this time I will never let anyone hurt you. Not even me. I opened my mouth, but no sound came out. Too many questions and emotions were lodged in my throat, finally dissolving into a bitter laugh. It's too late, Eleanor. Some damage, once it's done. Give me a chance, she interrupted, kneeling in front of me and grabbing my hands. You don't have to forgive me. Just let me prove it to you. Her tears dripped onto the back of my hand, so hot they nearly burned my skin. This version of Eleanor was a stranger, nothing like the cold, proud woman from my memories. Could I trust her? I stared at Eleanor's tear-streaked face, my mind a complete blank. What did she just say? She killed herself for me. You don't have to make up stories like that, I said, pulling my hand away, my voice hard. In the end, you had already decided I was petty and insecure, unworthy of being your husband, right? The color drained from Eleanor's face. She sank to the floor, her fingers clutching the fabric of her gown. That day, after you stormed out of the house, I was going to run after you. Her voice was barely a whisper. But Julian stopped me. He said it would be better to let you cool off, and I was stupid enough to listen to him. A sharp pain lanced through my chest. The memory of that day came rushing back. We had a huge fight because Julian had accidentally stayed late in her office again. I'd furiously accused her of blindly trusting that bastard, and she had sneered, asking if my inferiority complex was so bad I saw every man as a rival. When the police called the next day, I thought it was some sick prank. Eleanor looked up, the agony in her eyes threatening to drown me. It wasn't until I saw you in the morgue that I understood what it felt like to be torn apart. I stood and walked to the window, unwilling to let her see the conflict on my face. The city lights glittered in the night, a stark contrast to the rainy darkness of my memory. I spent 3 months investigating. Her voice came from behind me. The evidence of Julian bribing the truck driver, the security footage of him tampering with your car, and all the little tells he left behind every time he manipulated us. I turned around. Why are you telling me this now? Because this time, I will not let history repeat itself. Eleanor stood up and wiped her tears. You don't have to believe me, you can hate me, but please just give me a chance to make it right. I watched her in silence. The Eleanor before my rebirth would never have been this vulnerable. She was the famed Iron Lady of the business world, always proud and confident. The broken, remorseful woman before me was a stranger. I need time to think, I finally said. Eleanor nodded and pulled a key from her clutch, placing it on the coffee table. It's the key to the apartment in Soho. I had it cleaned. If you want to, move out for a while. I raised an eyebrow. In our past life, I was the one who had suggested we separate, and she had flown into a rage, accusing me of being unreasonable. You're okay with me moving out? No, she said with a bitter smile. But this time, I've learned to respect your choices. I picked up the key. Its metallic chill helped clear my head. Thanks. As I walked out of the lounge, I heard Eleanor say softly, I'll wait for you to come home, Caleb. I didn't look back. The Soho apartment was much better than I'd expected. A spacious and bright one-bedroom with a clean, modern design, and even a small balcony with a view of the city skyline. On the coffee table was a brand-new MacBook Pro and several original edition books on architectural design, all in my style. A picture frame sat on the nightstand. It was a photo of Eleanor and me from college. She was wearing a simple white t-shirt and jeans, leaning against my shoulder and smiling brilliantly. I picked it up, my thumb gently tracing her smiling face. Things were so good back then. No wealth gap, no Julian Croft, just pure, simple love. My phone buzzed. A text from Eleanor. Do you like the apartment? I saved some design project files on a laptop. Thought they might help with your studio. There's food in the fridge. Don't forget to eat dinner. I frowned. How did she know I wanted to open my own studio? At this point in our past life, I was still working at a large architectural firm. I only quit to go solo after my relationship with her had completely deteriorated. Unless she really was reborn, and she remembered everything that happened next. I texted back, thanks. How did you know I wanted to start a studio? Her reply was almost instant, because on this day in our last life, you got drunk and told me your dream was to have your own design studio. This time, I wanted to help you make it happen sooner. A knot formed in my chest. It was true. At our first anniversary party, fueled by alcohol, I confessed my frustration with the bureaucratic hellscape at the firm. At the time, she had just given me a dismissive, so just quit before turning to schmooze with another guest. Had the Eleanor of this life really changed so much? The next morning, the doorbell rang. Through the peephole, I saw a young man in a delivery uniform. Mr. Shaw, breakfast delivery, ordered by Ms. Vance. I opened the door and took the elegant food container. Inside were still steaming pastries and a thermos of artisanal coffee. My favorite breakfast from a small French bakery near our old college campus. My phone chimed again. Remembered you liked this. I'll be home late tonight. Don't wait up. I shook my head with a wry smile. In our past life, I'd often wait up for her until the early morning hours, while she always forgot to tell me her schedule. Had our roles now reversed. After breakfast, I decided to check out the new studio. Eleanor hadn't just arranged a workspace for me. She'd outfitted it with top-of-the-line equipment and 2 assistants, both of whom were up-and-coming designers in the industry. Ms. Vance said you might come in today, said the young female assistant, Sarah Morgan, with a smile. She had us prepare the files for the Riverbend project. She thought you'd be interested. I stared in shock at the project files on the screen. The Riverbend project was the first major project I had landed on my own in my past life. It was the design that put me on the map. How could Eleanor remember even that? How has Ms. Vance been? Lately, I couldn't help but ask. Sarah blinked. She seems to be in a good mood, but she's working harder than ever. After the board meeting yesterday, she immediately had someone run a background check on a man named Julian Croft, someone coming back from the UK, I think. My fists clenched. Julian Croft, the man who had ruined my previous life. What did Eleanor hope to find by investigating him? Was she truly trying to protect me? Or, the ringing of my phone cut through my thoughts. It was an unknown number. Mr. Shaw, this is Mr. Davies from Vance Enterprises Legal Department. Ms. Vance asked me to contact you regarding the ownership structure of your studio. There are some legal documents that require your signature. I hung up, a wave of irritation washing over me. Was Eleanor planning to insert herself into every aspect of my life? In our last life, she was indifferent to my career. Now, she was over-involved. Both extremes were suffocating. Tell Ms. Vance I won't be coming in today, I told Sarah before turning and leaving. I wandered aimlessly through the streets, trying to clear my head. As I passed a coffee shop, the TV in a window was tuned to CNBC. Vance Enterprises stock surged 5% today on rumors that CEO Eleanor Vance is planning a major strategic shift. The screen cut to a shot of Eleanor at a press conference. She was wearing a sharp white pantsuit, answering reporters' questions with poise and confidence. When asked about her marriage, she smiled slightly. My husband is the most important person in my life. We are both focused on our respective careers right now, but our relationship is very strong. I almost choked on my coffee. In our past life, when asked the same question, her response had been, I don't comment on my private life, which sent the media into a frenzy of speculation about our marriage being on the rocks. As I stood there, lost in thought, my phone rang again. This time it was my old college buddy, Mark Johnson. Caleb, you have to come to the reunion next week. Heard you're a big-shot architect now, huh? I mumbled a non-committal response, then a thought struck me. Is Eleanor going? Of course. You two are the legendary couple of our graduating class. Mark laughed. What, you guys fighting? No, just asking. After hanging up, I was lost in thought. The reunion. In our past life, I had made an excuse not to go because things were so tense with Eleanor. As it turned out, Julian Croft had just happened to show up and perform a whole childhood sweethearts act with Eleanor in front of everyone, turning me into a laughingstock. This time, should I go? On the day of the reunion, after much hesitation, I went. It wasn't because I wanted to see Eleanor, but because I was done being a coward. The hotel ballroom was already filled with 20 or so people, buzzing with conversation. I deliberately arrived half an hour late to avoid the awkwardness of walking in with Eleanor. Caleb Shaw. Mark spotted me instantly and waved me over. Over here. Your wife was just asking about you. I braced myself and walked over, my eyes instinctively searching for Eleanor. She was sitting by the window in a dark green dress, chatting with a few other women. Her eyes lit up when she saw me, then dimmed slightly. She didn't immediately come over to link her arm with mine like she used to. You grab a seat. I'm going to say hi to a few people, I told Mark, then walked toward her. Our former classmates naturally made room for me, right next to Eleanor. I hesitated for a second before sitting down. You came, Eleanor said softly, her fingers unconsciously toying with her wine glass. Is the apartment okay? Yeah, I replied curtly, taking a sip of water. The people around us sensed the strange vibe and tactfully changed the subject. Halfway through the party, after a few rounds of drinks, the atmosphere warmed up. All right, a toast to our power couple. Mark suddenly raised his glass. How long has it been since college? 7 years, Eleanor said without missing a beat. We started dating our junior year. We've been married for 1 year and 2 months. She remembered it that clearly? I gave her a surprised look. Cheers, cheers, our classmate shouted. Eleanor picked up my wine glass and stood. Caleb's stomach has been bothering him. I'll drink for him. As everyone watched in surprise, she downed a glass in one gulp. In our past life, at events like this, I was always the one taking drinks for her, because she was a lightweight. Whoa, the crowd hooted. Look at Ms. CEO protecting her man. Eleanor's cheeks flushed, whether from the alcohol or embarrassment, I couldn't tell. When she sat back down, she swayed slightly and accidentally leaned against my shoulder. Sorry. She quickly straightened up, but I put a hand on hers to stop her. Stop drinking, I frowned. You know you can't handle it. Eleanor looked up at me, her eyes shimmering. You used to boss me around like that. Her voice was full of nostalgia and sadness, and my heart softened. It was true. In college, I was always nagging her, not to stay up all night, not to drink on an empty stomach. She would complain, but secretly love it. Round 3. Mark filled the glasses again. This one, Caleb has to drink himself. I was about to take it, but Eleanor intercepted. No, he has an important meeting tomorrow. I'll drink. Another glass went down, and her eyes were starting to look unfocused. When Mark poured the fourth, I firmly stopped her. That's enough. I'm taking her home. As I helped the wobbly Eleanor out of the hotel, the cool night air hit us. She suddenly wrapped her arms around my waist and buried her head in my chest. Caleb, I'm so sorry. Her voice was thick with tears. Last time, I should have believed you. I should have seen through Julian's games. My body went stiff. Was she confessing? Do you know how he planned that crash? Eleanor looked up, tears glistening in the moonlight. He bribed the driver. Mess with your brakes. When I found the proof, I wanted to kill him. My heart hammered in my chest. She couldn't have made up those details. Unless she had really lived through my death. Don't talk about it, I said, gently patting her back. Let's get in the car. In the taxi, Eleanor leaned against my shoulder, dozing off. As we neared the apartment, she startled awake. No, not the Soho place. Let's go home. Our home. The driver looked at me in the rearview mirror. I sighed and gave him the address of our house. Everything at the house was the same, except for a large wedding photo of us hanging in the entryway, a photo that had been relegated to a storage closet in our past life. Eleanor stumbled toward the sofa, and I rushed to support her. Why are you doing all this? I finally asked the question that had been burning in my mind. Eleanor curled up on the sofa like a child who'd been caught doing something wrong. I was scared you'd hate me, that you wouldn't want to see me. I'd rather try win you back all over again. Her words hit me like a physical blow. All of her strange behavior, the breakfast, the studio, taking drinks from me, it all made sense now. She was trying to atone for the mistakes of her last life. Do you know when Julian is coming back? I asked suddenly. July 20th, a 3 p.m. flight. Eleanor mumbled, her words slurring. But I already arranged for reporters to be at the airport. He won't get a chance to get near you. I stared at her, stunned. The July 20th date had never been public. It was the result of a last-minute flight change by Julian. There was no way Eleanor could have known that unless she really was reborn. Eleanor suddenly grabbed my hand, her gaze surprisingly clear. Caleb, you came back too, right? That day in the lounge. The way you looked at me. I knew it. I was silent for a moment, then finally nodded. Yes, I was reborn too. Eleanor threw herself into my arms, sobbing uncontrollably. I'm so sorry. I'm so sorry. I swear I'll protect you this time. I'll never let him hurt you again. I stood rigidly, letting her hold me, my mind a whirlwind of emotions. Did I hate her? Of course. But looking at Eleanor, crying like a child in my arms, I couldn't help but feel my resolve soften. Stop crying, I said, gently pushing her away. You need a rest. Eleanor wiped her tears, then suddenly leaned in and gave me a soft kiss on the lips. Welcome back, my love. This time, I'll make you fall in love with me all over again. With that, she fell back onto the sofa, fast asleep, leaving me frozen in place, my fingers unconsciously touching my lips where the warmth of her kiss lingered. The next morning, I was awakened by noises from the kitchen. When I walked into the dining room, I found Eleanor, wearing an apron, attempting to make scrambled eggs. On the table were a couple of pieces of burnt toast. Morning, she said, turning to smile at me. There were dark circles under her eyes. I made breakfast, not sure how it turned out. I stood there, stunned. In all the time we'd been married, Eleanor had never once set foot in the kitchen. We'd always had a housekeeper for meals. Are you okay? I asked tentatively. Eleanor scraped the eggs onto a plate and gave a wry smile. A hangover plus 3 years of not cooking is not a great combination, but I think the eggs are edible. We ate in silence. Sunlight streamed through the floor-to-ceiling windows, casting a golden glow on the strange, yet warm, scene. About last night, I started. I remember all of it, Eleanor said, putting down her fork, including what I said, and the fact that you admitted you were reborn. She looked me straight in the eye. This time, I won't force you to accept me. But please, give me a chance to make amends. I'll prove to you that I'm different from the person I was. Just as I was about to answer, her phone rang. After she took the call, her expression grew serious. Julian moved up his flight. He's landing at noon today. A cold smile touched her lips. Good thing I was prepared. Prepared for what? Eleanor gave me a mysterious wink. A special welcome home ceremony. Want to come and watch? I hesitated for a moment, but curiosity won out. All right. At 12:30 p.m., we were sitting in a coffee shop near the International Arrivals Terminal at JFK. Eleanor wore sunglasses and a baseball cap, looking like any other traveler. Look over there, she said, pointing to a small group of people with cameras. Reporters from Forbes. They're here to get a shot of the returning star executive. How did you manage that? Eleanor chuckled. I just accidentally let it slip to the press that a brilliant executive was arriving today with a massive international project and that he might be partnering with Vance Enterprises. The media naturally took the bait. Just then, a familiar figure appeared at the exit. Julian Croft, dressed in a sharp suit, a confident smile on his handsome face. The man I had hated to my very core looked, at this moment, utterly harmless. Mr. Croft. The reporters swarmed him. Can you tell us about the project you're bringing back to the States? Is it true you'll be partnering with Vance Enterprises? Julian was clearly taken aback, obviously not expecting a press ambush. He quickly composed himself, offering a modest smile. You guys are well informed. However, the specific details of any partnership are still under discussion. We heard you and CEO Eleanor Vance are childhood friends. Does this collaboration signal a major strategic shift for Vance Enterprises? A flicker of pride crossed Julian's face. Just as he was about to answer, another reporter cut in. There are rumors that your return might cause trouble in Ms. Vance's marriage. How do you respond to that? His expression froze. That question was clearly not part of the script. I don't comment on private matters, he said with a forced smile, trying to push through the crowd. Eleanor watched the scene with satisfaction, then took out her phone and made a call. Sarah, you can release the statement now. 30 seconds later, my phone buzzed with a news alert. Vance Enterprises' official statement. No partnership plans with any overseas individuals. The reporters' phones began ringing one by one. After reading the news, their gazes turned on Julian, filled with suspicion. Mr. Croft, Vance Enterprises has just denied any partnership with you. Do you have a response? Were you attempting to mislead the public? Julian's face turned ashen as he shoved his way through the reporters and fled. Eleanor watched his retreating back and said coldly, "This is just the beginning." She turned to me, her expression softening. "Caleb, this time, I'll show you who truly loves you." I looked at her determined profile, and the wall of ice around my heart began to crack. Vance Enterprises' official statement. No partnership plans with any overseas individuals. I read the headline on my phone, a small smile playing on my lips. The image of Julian's frazzled escape from the reporters at the airport was still fresh in my mind. Satisfying, isn't it? Eleanor sat across from me, stirring her coffee with a sly grin. The sunlight streaming through the window softened the lines of her face. In that moment, she looked nothing like the cold, imperious titan of industry I remembered. You've changed a lot, I said, putting down my phone and looking directly at her. Eleanor's hand faltered for a second, the spoon clinking softly against the ceramic mug. Dying once tends to change a person, she said, her voice quiet but clear. The waiter brought our breakfast, breaking the delicate tension between us. Eleanor had ordered all my favorites, bacon and eggs, whole wheat toast, black coffee. In front of her was only a glass of green juice and a small bowl of oatmeal. Is that all you're eating? I frowned. I remembered her having a much healthier appetite. Eleanor smiled faintly. During that last stretch, I barely ate or drank anything. After I came back, it's like my stomach remembered the feeling. She paused. But it's okay. The doctor said it will get better with time. A heavy feeling settled in my chest. That last stretch, she meant the days after I had died. Julian won't give up that easily, I said, changing the subject. What's his next move? Eleanor's expression immediately hardened. If he follows the old script, he'll try to get into the company through my father. Your father? I looked up surprised. You never mentioned him before. Because I was embarrassed, Eleanor said with a bitter smile. My dad and Julian's father were partners in a failed startup back in the day. After it went under, the Crofts moved to the UK. My dad has always felt like he owed them, so he'll do almost anything Julian asks. She took out her phone and showed me a file. But this time, I came prepared. On the screen was a detailed background check, documenting Julian's various misdeeds in London, embezzling funds, sexually harassing subordinates, even a few suspicious debts. Is all this real? I scrolled through the document, incredulous. Every word, Eleanor said coldly. Last time I was blinded by our childhood friend's history and never bothered to look into his background. It wasn't until after you died that I discovered this polished, successful executive was actually a con man drowning in debt. I put down the phone, a mix of emotions churning inside me. If only the old Eleanor had been willing to investigate Julian like this, maybe our story would have had a different ending. I have to get to the office, Eleanor said, checking her watch. There's a board meeting today. I need to strike first. As she stood up, she hesitated, then leaned down and placed a soft kiss on my forehead. See you tonight? The unexpected gesture left me stunned. In the last year of our past life, we had stopped touching each other completely. Yeah, I managed to say, watching her leave. The lingering warmth on my forehead made my heart race. After Eleanor left, I went to the studio. Sarah was already there, a stack of documents on my desk. Mr. Shaw, these are the bid submission documents for the Riverbend project, she said, pushing up her glasses. Ms. Vance said you might want to look them over yourself. I opened the file, my brow furrowing as I read. The client for this project was the City Development Group. In my past life, it took me 3 months of hard work to win this contract. And now, the bidding process had just begun. Does Ms. Vance have connections at the City Development Group? I asked warily. Sarah smiled. Ms. Vance does know Chairman Lee, but she specifically told us not to interfere with this project. She pointed to the file. She said you could definitely win it on your own merit. I let out a breath I didn't realize I was holding. If Eleanor had tried to use her connections to get me the project, I would have refused. But the fact that she was preserving my dignity like this made me feel a surge of gratitude. Please thank Miss Vance for me, I said sincerely. You should probably thank her yourself, Sarah said with a wink. She's picking you up from the studio at 7 tonight. Something about a gala. A gala? Eleanor hadn't mentioned it to me. Before I could ask for more details, Sarah had already turned and left. I spent the entire afternoon studying the bid documents until the studio door opened. I looked up to see Eleanor standing there in a breathtaking black evening gown. Ready to go? She asked. It's the Chamber of Commerce anniversary gala tonight. I wanted to take you with me. It hit me then. In my past life, I had missed this gala because I was working late. Julian had run into Eleanor, and the press had snapped photos of them leaving together, sparking a wave of gossip. I don't have a suit, I said, shrugging. Like a magician, Eleanor produced a garment bag from behind her back. Already taken care of. Half an hour later, dressed in a brand-new tailored suit, I arrived at the gala with Eleanor. Under the crystal chandeliers, the city's business elite mingled and chatted. The moment Eleanor entered, she became the center of attention, with people constantly approaching to greet her. Unlike before, this time she kept her arm linked with mine, introducing me to everyone. This is my husband, Caleb Shaw, the renowned architect. This public acknowledgement warmed me. In our past life, she rarely introduced me this way at business functions, as if our relationship was something to be hidden. Eleanor, a familiar voice called from behind. My body tensed. I knew who it was without even turning around. Julian Croft. Eleanor's hand tightened on my arm. She turned slowly. Julian. What a coincidence. Julian, dressed in a silver-gray suit, approached us, looking dapper and confident. His smile was charming, but his eyes were cold as a snake's. I just got back and heard Vance Enterprises is booming. Of course, it would be with you at the helm. He completely ignored me, his gaze fixed on Eleanor. Remember our promise when we were kids? I said I'd come back and help you get the company into the Fortune 500. Eleanor offered a polite but distant smile. That was just childhood nonsense. I have an excellent team now, including my husband. She deliberately emphasized the last 2 words. Only then did Julian glance at me, his eyes filled with disdain. Oh, the architect. He stressed the word architect, implying I was out of my league. I was about to speak, but Eleanor cut him off coldly. Watch your tone, Julian. My husband's design talent is recognized throughout the industry. He just won the Asian Architecture Design Award. Julian's expression shifted. He clearly hadn't expected Eleanor to be so direct. He quickly adopted a wounded look. Eleanor, we haven't seen each other in years. Why are you being so cold? My father asked me to send his regards to you and your uncle. Eleanor's father was his trump card. In our past life, every time we argued about Julian, she would say just for my dad's sake. But this time, Eleanor was unmoved. Please thank your father for me. But business is business. If you want to discuss a partnership, Mr. Croft, you can go through the proper channels. With that, she turned and led me away, leaving Julian standing there, stunned. Nice one, I murmured. Eleanor squeezed my hand. We're just getting started. After the gala, We were in the underground parking garage waiting for our driver. Suddenly, Eleanor's phone rang. What? Right now? She frowned. All right, I'll be right there. Hanging up, she looked at me apologetically. Something urgent came up at the office. I have to go back. Can you get home on your own? I'll go with you, I said instinctively. Eleanor's eyes lit up, but then she shook her head. No, it's fine. It might be late. You go home and get some rest. I'll have the driver take you. Watching her hurry away, I felt a vague sense of unease. In our past life, she was often called away by a single phone call, and I later found out that many of those times, it was Julian's doing. As I was lost in thought, a black sedan pulled up in front of me. The window rolled down to reveal Julian. Mr. Shaw, need a ride? He was smiling, but his eyes were ice cold. No, thanks, I replied flatly. Don't be a stranger, he said, getting out of the car and walking toward me. Eleanor and I go way back. As her husband, we should really get along. He paused deliberately before the word husband, his contempt palpable. Get to the point, I said, meeting his gaze. Julian laughed. Straight to it, I like that. Fine, I'll be direct. You don't deserve to be with Eleanor. She needs someone who can support her career, not some kept man living off her money. I clenched my fists, then slowly relaxed them. That's between Eleanor and me. It's none of your business. None of my business? Julian sneered. Do you have any idea how many memories Eleanor and I share? Do you know who her father would rather have as a son-in-law? He leaned in close to my ear. Just you wait. You'll soon find out who the third wheel is. Just then, a familiar Mercedes pulled up, and Eleanor rushed out. Julian. Her voice was frigid. What are you doing? Julian immediately put on an innocent expression. Just chatting with Mr. Shaw, getting to know him better. Eleanor didn't even look at him. She walked straight to me and took my hand. Let's go home. In the car, Eleanor held my hand tightly, as if she were afraid I might disappear. What did he say to you? She finally asked. Nothing new. The usual, I said, not wanting to repeat his insults. Why did you come back? The more I thought about it, the more something fell off, Eleanor said, biting her lip. The call was about an urgent document that needed my signature, but when I got back to the office, it wasn't urgent at all. I suspected it was a trick to get me out of the way, so I rushed back. A warmth spread through my chest. The Eleanor of our past life would never have been this considerate. Thank you, I said softly. Eleanor rested her head on my shoulder, her voice tired. Caleb, I swear, this time I will never let anyone hurt you. Not even me. I didn't push her away. The next morning, Eleanor left for the office early, saying she had an important meeting. I went to the studio to continue working on the proposal for the Riverbend project. Around noon, Sarah rushed in. Mr. Shaw, you have to see this. I opened my phone. A news alert was glaring at me. New development at Vance Enterprises. Star executive Julian Croft appointed as special advisor. The accompanying photo was of Eleanor and Julian shaking hands in a conference room. It felt like a punch to the gut. Just last night, she had been so resolute. Had she changed her mind already? Was history doomed to repeat itself, even after being reborn? As I was seething, my phone rang. It was Eleanor. Caleb, did you see the news? She sounded exhausted. I saw it. Congratulations on getting what you wanted, I said coldly. It's not like that, Eleanor explained frantically. The board passed the appointment with a majority vote. I couldn't block it, not yet. But trust me, this is just a temporary measure. A temporary measure? I repeated sarcastically. That's what you said last time, too. There was a moment of silence on the other end. Give me 1 week. Eleanor's voice suddenly became firm. If Julian is still in this company in 1 week, I will resign and walk away with you. The promise was so heavy it left me speechless. Eleanor valued her company more than anything. For her to say something like that, why 1 week? I asked. Because the annual shareholders meeting is in 1 week, she said, lowering her voice. I need time to gather enough evidence to show everyone Julian's true colors. I was about to say more, but I heard a knock on the door on her end. I have to go, Eleanor said hurriedly. I'll explain everything when I get home tonight. Trust me, Caleb. After hanging up, I stood by the window dazed. Should I trust her? The reborn Eleanor had indeed changed, but I had also experienced Julian's schemes firsthand. He was a master of deception and manipulation. At 3 p.m, I got a call from the front desk at Vance Enterprises, saying Ms. Vance wanted me to come to her office. When I got to the headquarters, just as the elevator doors were about to close, a hand shot out and stopped them. The doors reopened, and Julian stepped in, a smile on his face. What a coincidence, Mr. Shaw. He pressed the button for the top floor, where the executive offices were. I didn't bother to respond, just shifted to the side. Didn't Eleanor tell you? Julian feignait de surprise. I'm her special advisor now. My office is right next to hers. I clench my fists, forcing myself to stay calm. By the way, he said, leaning in closer, Eleanor and I talked late into the night after she got back to the office. She was crying, saying you don't trust her at all. I whipped my head around to face him. What are you trying to say? Nothing, Julian shrugged. Just that if you really love her, you should let her go and find someone better. The elevator reached the top floor. As the doors opened, Eleanor was standing right there. She was clearly surprised to see us emerge together. Julian immediately stepped forward. Eleanor, I just ran into Mr. Shaw in the elevator. We were just talking about you. As he spoke, he reached out and adjusted the collar of her blouse, a gesture so intimate it looked like he had done it 1,000 times. From my angle, it looked like their faces were practically touching, as if they were about to kiss. Rage exploded in my head. I grabbed Julian and shoved him away. Get away from her. Julian stumbled, then suddenly seemed to lose his footing, falling backward and landing hard on the floor. Caleb, Eleanor gasped. Only then did I realize what I had done, but it was too late. Several employees who were passing by had stopped, staring at the scene in shock. Julian sat on the floor, a pained expression on his face. I was just fixing Eleanor's collar. Mr. Shaw, you're being overly sensitive. Eleanor looked at me, then at Julian, and then strode to the security console on the wall. Pull up the security footage from the elevator just now, she ordered the guard. Julian's face paled. That's not necessary. It was just a misunderstanding. Eleanor ignored him, pulling up the footage herself. The screen clearly showed Julian deliberately leaning in close to her. From a certain angle, it did look like a kiss, but in reality, there was always a few inches of space between them. Julian, Eleanor's voice was like ice. I don't care what game you're playing, but don't you ever try to drive a wedge between my husband and me again. She turned to the gawking employees. From now on, Mr. Croft's office will be moved to the 12th floor with the marketing department. He is not permitted in the executive suite without my express permission. Julian's face was a mask of fury, but he managed a tight smile. Eleanor, you've misunderstood. You'll call me Ms. Vance, Eleanor cut him off. And if I ever find you manufacturing another misunderstanding like this, you'll be doing more than just changing offices. With that, she took my hand and, in front of everyone, walked into her office, shutting the door firmly behind us. The moment we were inside, Eleanor wrapped her arms around me. I'm so sorry. I'm sorry you had to go through that again. I stood there stiffly, my heart pounding. The scene replayed in my mind. Eleanor, without hesitation, taking my side, exposing Julian's scheme in public. It was a world away from our past life. Why? I finally asked. Last time, you always believed him over me. Eleanor let go, her eyes welling with tears. Because I was a fool. I was blinded by our childhood friendship because She choked back a sob. Because I took your forgiveness for granted. I thought no matter what, you would always come back to me. She pulled me over to the sofa. Caleb, after I was reborn, I looked into everything. Every one of Julian's manipulations was planned. He knew which camera angles would create the illusion of intimacy. He knew exactly what to say to make me misunderstand you. And I fell for it every single time. I watched her in silence. I had told her all of this in our last life, but she had never believed me. Give me a chance to make it right, Eleanor said, taking my hand. After the shareholders' meeting next week, I will expose Julian for who he really is. Until then, please, try not to let him get to you, okay? I took a deep breath and nodded. Eleanor smiled, relieved. Good. Also, I have an announcement to make. She picked up the intercom. Sarah, tell all department heads to meet in the main conference room in 10 minutes. In the conference room, Eleanor stood at the head of the table, and I sat in a guest chair to her right. Everyone, she said, scanning the room. I have 2 announcements today. First, Mr. Croft's duties have been reassigned. He will now report directly to the VP of Marketing. Julian sat in the corner, his face grim. Second, Eleanor continued. The company is about to launch the Starlight Bay development project. I am proud to announce that my husband, Caleb Shaw, will serve as the lead design consultant. I stared at her in shock. Starlight Bay was Vance Enterprises' flagship project for the year, with an investment of over $1 billion. In our past life, she had never let me get involved in her core business, claiming it was a conflict of interest. Ms. Vance, the CFO, frowned. That's not standard procedure. A project of this scale usually requires a public bidding process. And we will follow standard procedure, Eleanor said calmly. Mr. Shaw's studio will participate in the bid. I am confident that his talent alone will produce the winning proposal. She looked at me, her eyes full of trust and support. In that moment, I understood what she was doing. This wasn't a handout. It was a fair chance to compete. After the meeting, Eleanor took me to see the project site. Standing in the middle of the vast, empty lot, she excitedly described her vision. "This will be the city's new landmark," she said, pointing toward the skyline. "And your design will be its soul." Bathed in the sunlight, Eleanor was radiant, her eyes sparkling with ambition. For a fleeting moment, I saw the passionate girl from college, the girl I had first fallen in love with. "Why the change of heart?" I asked. "Last time, you never wanted me involved in your company." Eleanor's smile faded slightly. "Because I was arrogant. I thought commercial architecture wasn't artistic enough for you. I was afraid it would compromise your talent." She shook her head in self-mockery. What a condescending thought. She turned to me, her gaze sincere. "This time I understand. Loving someone isn't about keeping them in an ivory tower. It's about supporting them as they shine in every field." A warmth spread through my chest, leaving me speechless. "Oh, by the way," Eleanor suddenly remembered, "how are the preparation for the Riverbend project bid coming along?" "Almost done," I said, surprised she still remembered. "The presentation is the day after tomorrow. You'll kill it." She stood on her toes and gave me a light kiss on the cheek. "I believe in you." The sudden intimacy left me stunned. Eleanor seemed to realize her own impulsiveness, her cheeks flushing slightly. I should get back to the office," she said, turning quickly, her retreat a little flustered. I watched her go, my hand touching the spot on my cheek where her lips had been. The wall of ice around my heart seemed to be melting, just a little more. On the day of the Riverbend project bidding, I arrived at the venue early. To my surprise, Eleanor was already waiting by the entrance, dressed in a sharp business suit. "What are you doing here?" I asked, surprised. "Here to support my husband, of course," she said, naturally linking her arm with mine. "But don't worry, no one from Vance Enterprises is on the judging panel. I'm purely a spectator." The hall was already crowded. I recognized representatives from several top firms. The competition was stiffer than I had imagined. "Nervous?" Eleanor whispered after we sat down. I shook my head. "I'm confident in my design." She smiled and discreetly squeezed my hand. "That's the Caleb Shaw I love." Her words made my heart skip a beat. It had been a long, long time since we'd had a moment like this. The bidding went smoothly. My proposal was highly praised by the panel. When the results were announced, Eleanor was even more excited than I was, nearly jumping out of her seat. "I knew you could do it," she said proudly as we left the venue, as if she were the one who had won. This unconditional support was something I wasn't used to. The old Eleanor had always been dismissive of my professional achievements, treating them like a hobby. "Thank you for coming," I said sincerely. Eleanor shook her head. "Don't thank me. This is what a husband and wife are supposed to do." She checked her watch. "I have to get back to the office. I have a business dinner tonight, so I might be home late." "With Julian?" I couldn't help but ask. Eleanor sighed. "It's a dinner arranged by the board. As a special advisor, he has to be there. But I promise, there will be no opportunity for us to be alone." She leaned in close to my ear. "If you're worried, you can come pick me up at the Summit Club around 9. The suggestion caught me off guard. In our past life, I never interfered with her business dinners, and she often came home late, sometimes not at all. Now she was actively inviting me to come get her. "Okay," I nodded. Back at the studio that afternoon, Sarah delivered some bad news. A material supplier we had a deal with suddenly backed out. It was a critical material for a project that was about to break ground. "They said someone offered to buy out their entire stock at double the price," Sarah said anxiously. "If we can't find an alternative, the project will be delayed." A delay meant huge penalty fees, enough to bankrupt my fledgling studio. I made a dozen calls, but the specialized material was indeed in short supply. Just as I was about to give up, my phone rang. It was an unknown number. "Mr. Shaw, this is Mr. Joe from Atlas Materials." The man introduced himself. "I heard you were looking for KL 37 structural steel. We happen to have a batch in our warehouse." I was immediately suspicious. "Who told you I was looking for it?" "Ms. Vance, of course, Mr. Joe said matter-of-factly. "She said your studio might need some help." I gripped the phone tightly. Eleanor again, interfering in my business. "That won't be necessary. Thank you," I said coldly and hung up. 10 minutes later, Eleanor called. I didn't answer. She sent a text. "It wasn't my doing. Julian deliberately cut off your supply chain. I just happened to know Mr. Joe and made an introduction. You can negotiate the price and terms yourselves." I stared at the text, skeptical. If Eleanor wanted to help, why not just have Mr. Joe sell it to me at the market rate? This roundabout way. Just then, Sarah ran in excited. "Mr. Shaw, great news. Apex Holdings said they have a batch of KEL 37 they can transfer to us, and it's 15% below market price." "Apex." I frowned. How do they know we needed it? They said it was an inventory adjustment, Sarah said, handing me the contract. I checked it over. It's all legitimate. I read the contract carefully. There were no hidden clauses. It was too much of a coincidence, but it solved my immediate crisis. After signing, I sent a text back to Eleanor. It's handled. Thanks. Whether she had arranged it or not, it was only polite. She didn't reply, probably busy with her dinner. At 8:30 p.m., I arrived at the Summit Club early. It was a high-end, members-only restaurant on the top floor of the city's tallest skyscraper. I told the hostess I was there to pick up Eleanor Vance, and she politely showed me to a waiting area. Through the glass wall, I could see into the main dining room. Eleanor, in a deep blue evening gown, was talking with several business leaders. Julian was standing by her side, occasionally leaning in to whisper something in her ear, his posture unnervingly intimate. I fought the urge to storm in. Eleanor had told me to come at 9. Going in now would only embarrass her. At exactly 9 o'clock, I returned to the hostess stand. This time, she led me directly into the restaurant. Eleanor's eyes lit up when she saw me. She immediately excused herself from her conversation. My husband is here to pick me up. If you'll excuse me. Julian's expression darkened for a split second before being replaced by a fake smile. Mr. Shaw, right on time. I'm always punctual, I replied calmly, taking Eleanor's clutch. Ready to go? Eleanor nodded. After saying her goodbyes, she linked her arm with mine, and we left. I could feel Julian's burning gaze following us the entire way out. In the elevator, Eleanor let out a long sigh. Thank you for coming to get me. Dealing with those people is exhausting. Did Julian try anything? I asked. Eleanor scoffed. He spent the whole night acting overly familiar in front of the guests, casually mentioning our childhood friendship, trying to imply there was something special between us. I clenched my fists. Did they believe him? People in this business are too smart to be fooled that easily. Eleanor shook her head. But that wasn't his only goal. He deliberately prepared the wrong presentation materials for our meeting with Delacourt Consolidated tomorrow, hoping to make me look like a fool. You found out. The advantage of being reborn, Eleanor winked. He pulled the same trick in our last life, and it cost me a huge contract. This time, I came prepared with the correct files. As we stepped out of the elevator, Eleanor suddenly stumbled. I quickly steadied her. What's wrong? Nothing, probably just had a bit too much to drink, she said, leaning against my shoulder, her breathing shallow. I noticed then that her face was pale, and a fine sheen of sweat covered her forehead. You're not well, I said, my tone firm. We're going to the hospital. I don't need to. Eleanor started to protest, but a wave of dizziness forced her to grip my arm tighter. Without another word, I scooped her up into my arms and ran towards the parking garage. On the way to the hospital, Eleanor curled up in the passenger seat, sweating and clearly in pain. Just hold on, we're almost there, I said, one hand on the steering wheel, the other gripping hers. The ER doctor diagnosed it as acute gastritis and said she needed to be admitted for observation. While I was filling out the paperwork, a nurse asked me, "And you are the patient's husband?" I answered without hesitation. The moment the word left my lips, I realized how long it had been since I'd said it. Since we had separated, I had consciously avoided acknowledging our marital status. In the hospital room, Eleanor was asleep with an forward her arm. I sat by her bed, looking at her pale face, a storm of emotions churning inside me. The doctor said it was caused by long-term irregular eating habits and immense stress. Since her rebirth, Eleanor had been working nonstop, dealing with Julian and the board, all while carefully trying to win me back. It was no wonder her body had given out. My phone vibrated. It was a text message from Sarah, but it was clearly meant for Eleanor. Ms. Vance, the contract with Apex Holdings is signed. Julian has no idea we arranged it. I stared at the message, and everything clicked into place. Apex Holdings was Eleanor's doing, but she hadn't helped me directly. She had used a third party, solving my problem while preserving my pride. In that moment, the last of my defenses crumbled. Eleanor had truly changed. She was no longer the domineering woman from our past life. She had learned to respect my feelings and my choices. Did a woman like this deserve a second chance? In the morning, Eleanor woke up to find me still sitting by her bed. Her eyes widened in surprise. You stayed all night. I nodded. How are you feeling? Much better. She tried to sit up, and I quickly helped her. Thank you, Caleb. Of course. I handed her a glass of warm water. Sarah texted you last night. I saw it. About Apex Holdings. Eleanor's hand trembled, nearly spilling the water. I just wanted to help, but I didn't want you to feel like I was interfering. I know. I cut her off. Thank you. Those two simple words made Eleanor's eyes well up instantly. She looked down and whispered, "You don't have to thank me." The doctor came in and said she could be discharged but needed to rest for a few days. I drove her home. The car ride was unusually quiet. "What are you thinking about?" I asked at a red light. Eleanor stared out the window. "I was remembering the time I got sick in our last life. You took care of me just like this. After a while, I got used to it. I started to take it for granted." She turned to me, her eyes filled with regret. "I owe you so much, Caleb." I didn't respond. I just reached over and took her hand. Back at the house, I helped Eleanor get settled in bed. I was about to go to the kitchen to make some soup when she grabbed the hem of my shirt. "The shareholders' meeting is the day after tomorrow," she said, her voice weak but firm. "I've gathered evidence of Julian's embezzlement and corporate fraud. This time, I'm going to drive him out of the company for good." I sat down on the edge of the bed. "What do you need me to do?" Eleanor looked surprised that I had offered to help. Her eyes lit up. You're willing to help me?" "We're husband and wife," I said calmly. "We've had our problems, but this time, I want to try starting over." Tears streamed down Eleanor's face. She threw her arms around me, sobbing. I promise it will be different this time." I gently patted her back, the wall of ice around my heart finally melting completely. Maybe being reborn wasn't about avenging the past, but about mending what was broken. This time, we both had a chance to do better. The night before the shareholders' meeting, I was helping Eleanor organize the final pieces of evidence. She had recovered quickly. The doctor's recommendation of a few days of rest had, for her, meant 24 hours. "Is this really enough?" I asked, frowning as I looked through the proof of Julian's embezzlement. "With your father protecting him, I'm afraid." Eleanor stopped typing and looked at me. "I've already handled my dad." She took a file from her drawer and handed it to me. Inside were Julian's gambling debts from the UK and several photos of him at a casino in Las Vegas, surrounded by scantily clad women. "You didn't find us last time?" Eleanor shook her head. "Last time, it never even occurred to me to look. In my mind, Julian was always the boy next door who protected me from bullies when we were kids." She gave a bitter laugh. "How ironic. He protected me from everyone else, only to become the one who hurt me the most." I took her hand. "After tomorrow, everything will be okay." Eleanor leaned her head on my shoulder. "It's so good to have you back in my life," she whispered. The next morning, we went to the office together. Eleanor was dressed in a sharp black suit, her makeup flawless, showing no signs of her recent illness. Only I knew she had barely slept, double-checking every piece of evidence. "Nervous?" I asked in the elevator. Eleanor shook her head. "The best thing about being reborn is knowing all the cards in the deck." She paused. "Except for the ones in your heart." Her words sent a jolt through me. I had certainly felt her change, but the wounds from our past were deep, and I was still holding back. The conference room was already filled with shareholders and executives. Julian was seated near the head of the table. When he saw us walking together, a dark look flashed in his eyes. Eleanor's father, who was at the head of the table, was visibly surprised to see me. Since Eleanor and I had married, my father-in-law had always been lukewarm towards me, let alone inviting me to a corporate meeting. "Let's begin," Eleanor said curtly, turning on the projector. For the next 40 minutes, she methodically laid out Julian's various wrongdoings since joining the company, from embezzling funds and leaking trade secrets to evidence of him deliberately sabotaging the deal with Delacorte Consolidated. The atmosphere in the room grew heavy. Several major shareholders began whispering among themselves, and Julian's face grew paler by the minute. Based on the evidence presented, I proposed the immediate termination of Julian Croft's position as special advisor, and that the company pursue legal action, Eleanor concluded. The room fell silent. All eyes turned to Eleanor's father, waiting for his response. After a long pause, he finally spoke. "Julian, do you have anything to say to these accusations?" Julian stood up, his face a mask of wounded innocence. "Uncle, this so-called evidence is all taken out of context. I have been nothing but loyal to Vance Enterprises. How could I?" "Then how do you explain this?" Eleanor cut him off coldly, playing an audio recording. Julian's voice filled the room, clear as day. "As long as I can get the internal data from Vance Enterprises, Delacorte is willing to pay off all my debts." Julian's face turned ashen. This is doctored. Eleanor, how could you frame me like this?" "Enough." Eleanor's father slammed his hand on the table. "Julian, I treated you like a son. Is this how you repay me?" Just as the situation seemed decided, the conference room door burst open. An assistant rushed in and whispered something in Eleanor's ear. Eleanor's face paled. "When did this happen?" 10 minutes ago. It's already trending on Twitter." Eleanor quickly opened her phone and showed me the screen. A headline screamed at me. Scandal at Vance Enterprises? Insider leaks show CEO's husband, Caleb Shaw, stealing trade secrets. The article was accompanied by photos of me meeting privately with a vice president from Delacorte Consolidated, along with several blurry screenshots of a text conversation that appear to show me feeding him internal information from Vance Enterprises. I looked up stunned. This is fake. I know. Eleanor interrupted calmly. But the timing is too perfect. She turned to the room. Everyone, this is clearly a deliberate attempt to sabotage today's meeting. Please give me some time to get to the bottom of this. Julian suddenly laughed. Ms. Vance, are you still going to cover for your husband when the evidence is right there? No wonder the company has had so many security leaks lately. Eleanor's gaze was sharp as a knife. Julian, do you really think anyone is going to fall for such a pathetic trick? She picked up her phone and made a call. Sarah, give me Mr. Henderson at Delacorte on the line now. I want the unedited security footage from that day. Yes, right now. Hanging up, she scanned the room. The trust and love between my husband and I cannot be broken by such cheap tactics. As for the leak, I will give you all an explanation within the hour. The meeting was temporarily adjourned. Eleanor and I went to her office. The moment the door was closed, she was on the phone with the PR department. Release a statement denying all allegations. Prepare to sue the outlets that ran the story for defamation. No, don't take any interviews for now. After hanging up, she turned to me. This is Julian's last-ditch effort. The photos are real, but they've been taken out of context. I thought back. That was 2 weeks ago. I went to Delacorte to discuss a materials supply contract. I know, Eleanor nodded. I was the one who sent you. The problem is the text messages are forged. It will take time to prove it. Just then my phone buzzed. An unknown number had sent me several photos, intimate-looking pictures of Eleanor and Julian in a hotel room. What is this? I handed her the phone, my voice tightening. Eleanor's eyes widened. This is photoshopped. I would never. She stopped, looking closer. Wait, the background is the Summit Club. From the business dinner last week. She quickly pulled up her calendar from that day. I went straight to the hospital after that dinner. How could? He must have spliced together different photos. Even though I knew logically that it was probably fake, the sight of the photos made my heart clench. Memories from our past life came flooding back. All the intimate photos Julian had made sure I saw, Eleanor's impatient explanations, the explosive fights that followed. Caleb, Eleanor looked at me, her expression worried. You believe me, right? I took a deep breath, pushing down the unease. Of course I believe you. The problem is these photos have probably been sent to the media, too. As if on cue, Sarah burst into the office. Ms. Vance, it's bad. More outlets are reporting on your alleged affair with Mr. Croft. The company's stock is starting to fall. Eleanor's face hardened. I knew it. She turned to me. Caleb, we need to face the press. Together. I was taken aback. Are you sure? In a situation like this, usually, that's exactly why we have to appear together, Eleanor said firmly. I want everyone to know that we are a united front, and that no amount of manipulation will break us. An hour later, at the Vance Enterprises press conference, Eleanor stood at the podium in a business suit, and I stood by her side, facing a barrage of flashing cameras. Ms. Vance, do you have a response to the photos of you and Mr. Croft? Mr. Shaw, did you really steal trade secrets from your wife's company? Is your marriage effectively over? Eleanor held up a hand for silence. First, regarding the allegation that my husband stole trade secrets, that is malicious slander. She played a video on the screen behind her. This is the complete, unedited security footage from Delacorte Consolidated on that day, proving that their meeting was public and professional. The video clearly showed our meeting taking place in the open cafe area of the Delacorte lobby, with people constantly walking by. It was obviously not a place for a secret deal. As for those so-called intimate photos, Eleanor continued with a cold smile. Any professional can see that they are doctored. More importantly, she took my hand. My husband and I have a strong and stable relationship, and we will not allow outsiders to interfere. A reporter suddenly called out, Mr. Shaw, are you really not bothered by your wife's close relationship with Mr. Croft? I stepped forward, looking directly at the reporter. First of all, those photos are fake. Secondly, I paused, looking at Eleanor. My wife is the person I trust most in this world, just as she trusts me. These pathetic attempts at manipulation will only bring us closer together. A look of surprise flashed in Eleanor's eyes. It was the first time since our rebirth that I had so publicly and unequivocally declared my support for her. Finally, Eleanor took over. We have concrete proof that the person behind these rumors is Julian Croft. Vance Enterprises will be pursuing full legal action against him. After the press conference, the company's stock began to rebound. The board unanimously voted to terminate Julian's position. Even Eleanor's father personally apologized. "Caleb, I was an old fool. I almost let a wolf into our home." Back in her office, Eleanor let out a long sigh and collapsed onto the sofa. "Finally, it's over." I sat down next to her. "It's not over. Julian won't give up that easily." "I know," she said, leaning her head wearily on my shoulder. "But he's lost the trust of the board and my father. There's not much more damage he can do." I hesitated, then asked, "Those photos, even though I knew they were fake when I saw them, I still—" Eleanor immediately sat up straight and looked at me seriously. "Caleb, in this life, you are the only one in my heart. Julian is nothing to me. He never was." Her gaze was so sincere that the last vestiges of doubt in my mind vanished. "I believe you," I said softly, pulling her into my arms. In that moment, I felt a long-standing barrier between us finally break. For the first time since our rebirth, we were truly acting like a married couple, trusting and supporting each other. 3 days later, Eleanor told me, "Delacourt has invited me to their headquarters in London for a site visit. I'll be gone for a week. Will Julian be there?" I asked, sensing a problem. Eleanor nodded. "The trip was scheduled before all this happened. He's still technically the project lead, so he has to go. But don't worry, the rest of the team will be there the entire time. There won't be any opportunity for us to be alone." Even though it made me uneasy, I nodded. "Be careful." Eleanor leaned in and kissed my cheek. "I'll call you every day." And she winked. "I might just come back early and surprise you." After she left, the apartment felt strangely empty. I buried myself in work to keep my mind occupied, but the fake photos kept flashing in my head. Logically, I knew Eleanor wouldn't betray me, but the emotional scars from our past life were hard to ignore. Every time my phone rang, I dreaded what I might hear. On the fourth night, I was working late at the studio when I received a text. It was from an unknown number with a photo attached, a picture of Eleanor and Julian in a hotel room. This one didn't look photoshopped. Then came another text. "Want to know what your wife is doing right now?" My hands started to shake. This couldn't be real. Eleanor had promised the whole team would be together. Just as I was about to call her, another text came through. "She's in my bed, just like we used to do in our last life." The blood rushed to my head. I shot up from my chair, nearly knocking it over. It had to be Julian trying to mess with me, but what if something had really happened? I dialed Eleanor's number. It rang and rang, but no one answered. Just as I was about to try again, the studio door swung open. Eleanor stood in the doorway, looking tired from her travels, her suitcase in hand. "I'm back early," she said with a smile. "Surprise." I just stood there, my phone still pressed to my ear. Eleanor looked at me, confused. "What's wrong?" I handed her my phone. As she read the messages, her face darkened. "That bastard." She immediately dialed a number. "Sarah, I need you to trace this number now." "Yes, right now." After hanging up, she came over to me. "Caleb, these photos are fake. I've been on a plane all night. How could I possibly?" She stopped, looking closer at the photo. "Wait, this was photoshopped from the pictures taken before the business dinner. Look at my dress and my hair." I looked again and realized she was right. Her outfit in the photo was the same one she had worn to the Summit Club. He deliberately sent them at a time when he knew you couldn't reach me, Eleanor said, shaking with anger. "Thank God I came back early." She sat down next to me and opened her phone's photo gallery. "Look, these are from my trip. Every photo is time-stamped and geotagged. I was with the team the entire time." The photos showed Eleanor with several colleagues. Julian was in some of them, but there was always a clear distance between them. "Why didn't you answer your phone?" I asked. "My phone was off. I came straight here from the airport," Eleanor explained. "I wanted to surprise you." I let out a long breath and pulled her into my arms. "I'm sorry. I almost fell for it again." Eleanor shook her head. "It's not your fault. Julian knows exactly how to exploit our weaknesses." She rested her head on my chest. "But this time, I won't give him any more chances." That night, we returned to our house for the first time in a while. Eleanor took a hot bath and emerged wearing one of my old t-shirts, her hair still dripping. The sight warmed my heart. She used to do that all the time in college, wandering around my dorm room in my clothes, saying she liked having my scent on her. "What are you thinking about?" she asked, sitting down next to me, smelling of fresh soap. "Thinking about college," I said, running my fingers through her damp hair. "You always used to steal my clothes." Eleanor smiled. "Things were so much simpler then, weren't they?" Her smile faded. "Caleb, what if? What if this time we still can't escape Julian's shadow?" "We will," I interrupted. "This time is different. We'll face it together." Eleanor looked up at me, her eyes shining with unshed tears. "Are you really willing to give me another chance?" I didn't answer with words. I leaned down and kissed her. It was a gentle, steady kiss, filled with all the emotions I couldn't articulate. When we finally broke apart, Eleanor's cheeks were flushed, and her eyes had a brightness I hadn't seen in a long, long time. "I love you, Caleb," she whispered. "This time, I will never betray your love." I stroked her face and noticed a faint scar on the inside of her left wrist. I had never seen it before. It was so fine it was almost invisible. "What's this?" I frowned. Eleanor instinctively tried to pull her hand away, but I held it fast. Looking closer, I saw it wasn't an ordinary scar. It was the clean, straight line of a blade. "In your past life." My throat tightened as I understood. "You really—" Eleanor nodded softly. "With the letter opener you gave me." A bitter smile touched her lips. "The irony is, Julian was the one who convinced you to buy it for me. Said suited my style." A wave of dizziness washed over me. Even though she had told me she'd try to kill herself, seeing the physical proof felt like a knife in my gut. "Did it hurt?" I whispered, my fingers gently tracing the scar. Eleanor shook her head. "Not as much as losing you." She leaned against my shoulder. "When I was holding your ashes, all I wanted was to be with you again." Her words shattered my last defense. I pulled her into a tight embrace, as if I could meld her into my very bones. "I'll be okay this time," I said, my voice choked with emotion. "We'll both be okay." That night, we were truly together again, not just in body but in soul. The wounds of the past were still there, but they were no longer a barrier. They were a reminder to cherish what we had now. The morning sun streamed through the curtains. When I woke up, Eleanor was gone. I heard a faint clattering from the kitchen and followed the sound to find her struggling to flip an egg. "Good morning," I said, wrapping my arms around her from behind and kissing her neck. Eleanor turned, brandishing a spatula and smiling at me. "Breakfast is almost ready. It might not be perfect." It definitely wasn't perfect. The egg was slightly burnt, the toast was overdone, and the bacon was greasy. But it was the most satisfying meal I'd ever had. "What's on your agenda today?" I asked as I ate. Eleanor took a sip of her coffee. "I have to go to the office this morning to catch up on paperwork, and then sign the contract with Delacourt this afternoon." She hesitated. "Julian is still technically in charge of the project, but he'll be officially terminated as soon as the contract is signed." I nodded. "Do you want me to go with you? You wouldn't mind?" "Of course not," I said, taking her hand. "We said we'd face everything together." A flicker of emotion crossed Eleanor's face. "Okay, see you at the office at 2. After Eleanor left, I went to the studio. The moment I walked in, Sarah came over, a conspiratorial look on her face. "Mr. Shaw, I have the information you asked for." She handed me a file. "Julian owes at least $2 million in gambling debts in the UK. The creditors are not the friendly type." I flipped through the file, my frown deepening. In addition to the gambling debts, there were several sealed sexual harassment complaints and even evidence of potential corporate fraud. "This information, Ms. Vance had it all gathered a while ago," Sarah whispered. "She's planning to expose him in front of all the senior executives today, right after the contract is signed." I nodded thoughtfully. It seemed Eleanor had planned the perfect send-off for Julian. At 2 o'clock, I arrived at Vance Enterprises. The signing ceremony was being held in the top-floor conference room. When I got there, it was already filled with executives and representatives from Delacourt. Julian, dressed in a sharp suit, was greeting guests at the door. When he saw me, a cold glint appeared in his eyes. "Mr. Shaw, you're here too?" he said with a fake smile. "At a business function like this, you might be a bit—" "I invited my husband," Eleanor said, suddenly appearing behind me and naturally linking her arm with mine. "Is there a problem?" Julian's face stiffened. "Of course not." The signing ceremony went smoothly. The chairman of Delacourt even came over to shake my hand. "Mr. Shaw, it's an honor. My wife is a huge admirer of your Riverbend project design." Eleanor introduced me proudly. "My husband just won the Asian Emerging Architect Award." Seeing the pride in Eleanor's face, a warmth spread through me. In our past life, she had never praised me so openly, always believing that personal matters had no place in a professional setting. After the signing was complete and everyone was preparing to leave, Eleanor suddenly spoke up. "If I could have your attention for one more moment, there is one last piece of business to address." She walked to the projector and inserted a flash drive. "It concerns some inappropriate actions on the part of our former special advisor, Julian Croft." For the next 10 minutes, Eleanor calmly presented a summary of Julian's misdeeds, from embezzlement and sexual harassment to audio recordings of him attempting to sell company secrets. The atmosphere in the room turned to ice. Julian's face was ashen. He shot to his feet. "This is all slander. Eleanor, are you really going to frame me just to please your husband?" Eleanor was unfazed. Shall I contact the casinos in Vegas to confirm your debts? Or perhaps I should reach out to a few of your former friends in London and ask about those harassment claims. Julian's face went from white to green. He suddenly whirled on me. Caleb Shaw, you think you've won? The way she's treating me today is how she'll treat you tomorrow. I ignored his taunt and walked to Eleanor's side, taking her hand. Let's go. That simple gesture was more powerful than any words. Julian stared at our clasped hands, a crazed look in his eyes. You'll both regret this, he snarled, before storming out of the room. After the meeting, the Delacour chairman stayed behind. Business is like a battlefield, he said. The worst enemy is the one within. Ms. Vance, you have a sharp eye for character. I'm impressed. Once the guests had left, Eleanor let out a long sigh. Finally, one big problem solved. Do you think he'll let it go? I asked, a little worried. Eleanor shook her head. No, but at least he'll never get near the company's core business again. She checked her watch. I need to go to the legal department to handle his termination papers. Dinner tonight? To celebrate. I nodded and decided to wait for her in the lounge. Not long after I sat down, my phone buzzed. It was a text from an unknown number. Want to know how Eleanor really died in your last life? It was followed by a photo, a bloody letter opener lying next to a hospital death certificate. Eleanor Vance's name was clearly visible. Cause of death: exsanguination due to lacerations on the wrist. My hand started to shake. This was proof of Eleanor's suicide. How did Julian have it? Another text arrived. She was beautiful when she killed herself, clutching her ashes. Want to know the details? Come to the old warehouse. Alone. The attached address was for the abandoned warehouse on the remote road where I had crashed my car. The blood in my veins turned to ice. It was an obvious trap, but I had to know what happened after I died. Eleanor had never gone into detail about her suicide, and that death certificate looked horrifyingly real. After a moment of hesitation, I decided to go. But before I left, I sent a text to Sarah. If I don't call you back in 2 hours, give this address to Eleanor Vance. On the drive to the warehouse, my heart pounded faster and faster. This road was all too familiar. This was where the truck had hit me, killing me instantly. The warehouse was at the end of the road, surrounded by desolation. I parked my car, took a deep breath, and pushed open the rusty iron door. In the center of the dim warehouse, Julian was sitting leisurely in a chair, playing with a letter opener, the exact one from the photo. Right on time, Caleb Shaw, he said with a cold smile, standing up. It seems you're very eager to know how your beloved wife died for you. Where did you get those photos? I demanded. I have my sources, Julian said, pacing. Did you know I was there when Eleanor fell down the stairs, clutching her urn? My fists clenched. What did you do to her? Me? He spread his hands in an exaggerated gesture. I simply told her the truth, that your death was her fault. If she hadn't trusted me over you, if she hadn't ignored your feelings time and time again, you never would have stormed out of the house, and you wouldn't have. Shut up, I roared. What do you want? Julian rushed toward me, his eyes gleaming with a manic light. I want Eleanor to pay off my debts. I was so close to succeeding last time. A few more fights, she would have divorced you, and then I could have. So it was always about the money, I sneered. Money was part of it. Julian's expression turned ugly. But what I enjoyed more was the feeling of having you both in the palm of my hand. Watching the high and mighty Eleanor Vance groveling. Watching you, the little architect, suffer. It was so much fun. He pulled a gun from his pocket. I may have failed this time, but I have one last card to play. I took an involuntary step back. You'll never get away with killing me. Who said anything about killing you? Julian smiled menacingly. I want Eleanor to experience the pain of losing the one she loves all over again. Only this time, she's going to watch you die right in front of her. He took out his phone and dialed a number. Eleanor, want to see your husband one last time? He's right. Just then, the warehouse doors were thrown open, flooding the space with blinding light. Eleanor burst in, flanked by several police officers. Drop your weapon, the police shouted, their guns aimed at Julian. Julian clearly hadn't anticipated this. In a panic, he grabbed me and pressed the gun to my temple. Don't come any closer, or I'll kill him. Eleanor's face was pale, but her voice was steady. It's over, Julian. You're surrounded. Put down the gun, and you might get a lighter sentence. Lighter? Julian laughed maniacally. I owe the mob $2 million. I'm a dead man either way. I already paid your debts, Eleanor said suddenly. Both Julian and I froze. What? Julian's hand trembled slightly. I found your creditors. I cleared your debts this morning, Eleanor said, taking a step forward. Now, put down the gun. At least this way, you won't have to die today. Julian's resolve seemed to waver. You? Why would you? Because I want you to live. Eleanor's voice was like ice. Live and watch Caleb and me be happy together. Live and rot in a prison cell for the rest of your life. That blow seemed to hit Julian harder than the threat of death. His hand went limp. The police rushed forward and tackled him. As the handcuffs clicked shut, Julian burst into insane laughter. Eleanor, you think you've won? I'll never forget the sight of you sobbing over his ashes. This time a police officer covered his mouth and dragged him away. Eleanor rushed over to me, her trembling hands cupping my face. Are you okay? Why didn't you tell me you were coming to see him? I took her hands. I had to know the truth about what he had on you. From last time, tears streamed down Eleanor's face. You fool. None of that matters. All that matters is that we're together in this life. She threw herself into my arms, and I held her tight, feeling the steady beat of her heart against my chest. Let's go home, I whispered. On the way home, Eleanor told me how she had found me. Sarah had seen my text and immediately called her, and she had used my phone's GPS to locate me. I'm so glad I got there in time, she said, her voice tired as she leaned against my shoulder. I kissed the top of her head. We're never going to be separated again. As night fell, we held each other, finally at peace. The shadows of our past life had finally lifted, and the dawn of a new one was just beginning. 3 days after Julian's arrest, Eleanor called a special board meeting. I attended as a special consultant, sitting in the back row. Everyone, Eleanor said, standing in front of the projector screen in a sharp white suit. I have 2 announcements today. She clicked the remote, and a set of financial projections appeared. First, our partnership with Delacour Consolidated is officially underway and is expected to increase company profits by at least 15% annually. The board members nodded, smiling. Since Julian's ousting, the company's stock had soared for 3 consecutive days. The second announcement, Eleanor's tone turned serious, concerns Julian Croft. The screen switched to a legal document. Our investigation has revealed that Mr. Croft was not only involved in corporate fraud, but also had illicit dealings with several members of this board. Her sharp gaze swept across the room. Mr. Davis, Ms. Chun, do I need to elaborate? The 2 board members she named went pale. Ms. Vance, there must be some misunderstanding. Mr. Davis stammered. Eleanor gave a cold smile and played an audio recording. Julian's voice filled the room. Mr. Davis promised that if I could get Eleanor to divorce her husband, he would support my bid for CEO. Naturally, he would be well compensated. The room erupted in murmurs. According to the company bylaws, I propose the immediate suspension of Mr. Davis and Ms. Chun, pending a full investigation, Eleanor said, looking around the room. Any objections? No one raised a hand. The 2 were company veterans who had always thrown their weight around. No one had suspected they were in league with Julian. With one move, Eleanor had not only eliminated Julian's remaining allies, but had also solidified her own leadership. After the meeting, Eleanor took me back to her office. She closed the door, let out a long sigh, and collapsed onto the sofa. Exhausted? I asked, sitting next to her and gently massaging her shoulders. She leaned against me and closed her eyes. It's finally over. Since I came back, all I've thought about is how to deal with Julian, how to make things right with you. I kissed her forehead. You've done more than enough. Eleanor shook her head and opened her eyes. There's one last thing. She took a document out of her bag. This is a list of Julian's debts. It wasn't just gambling debts he had in the UK, but also loans from loan sharks. They gave him a 3-month deadline, or else. So that's why he was in such a hurry to get back to you, I realized. Was it the same in our last life? Eleanor nodded. I checked. The timing of his return in our last life coincided exactly with when I had fulfilled my performance agreement and gained full control of the company. He needed me to be wealthy enough to pay off his debts. I thought back to our past life. Soon after Julian returned, Eleanor had indeed closed a major deal that doubled the company's valuation. She had been so excited to share the news with me at the time. So he never came back for you. I murmured. Eleanor gave a bitter smile. Never. He just saw me as an ATM. She took my hand. Caleb, I was so stupid last time to think that someone like that. I cut her off. Don't blame yourself anymore. We won this time. That's all that matters. Eleanor's phone suddenly rang. She answered, and her expression changed. What? When? I'm on my way. What's wrong? I asked after she hung up. Julian escaped from custody, Eleanor said, quickly gathering her things. The police just discovered he assaulted his bail bondsman. He's missing. My heart sank. Where would he go? Eleanor thought for a moment. He's desperate. He might. She looked up, a flicker of fear in her eyes. Caleb, don't go out alone for the next few days. You think he'll come after us? I don't think. I know, Eleanor said, grabbing her coat. I have to go to the police station. You go straight home and have security double the patrols. I walked her to the elevator. Be careful. Eleanor nodded and, just before the doors closed, gave me a reassuring smile. This time, we won't make the same mistakes. Back at our house, I checked the security system and made sure all the doors and windows were locked. The bodyguards Eleanor had hired were patrolling the grounds. Everything seemed secure, but a knot of unease tightened in my stomach. A man like Julian, when backed into a corner, was capable of anything. By 9 p.m., Eleanor still wasn't back. I sent her a text, but there was no reply. I called her phone, but it went straight to voicemail. This was highly unusual. Since our rebirth, Eleanor had never ignored my calls, let alone turned off her phone. I immediately called Sarah. Ms. Vance? She left the police station 2 hours ago, Sarah said, sounding confused. She said she was coming straight home. My heart began to race. I called Eleanor's driver, but his phone was off too. Just as I was about to call the police, my phone buzzed. It was a text from an unknown number. Want to see your wife? Come to the old place. Alone. Don't call the cops, or she's dead. It was followed by a photo. Eleanor was tied to a chair, her mouth covered with duct tape, her eyes wide with terror. The background looked like the abandoned warehouse. My hand started to shake. That maniac Julian. He had kidnapped Eleanor. My rational mind told me to call the police, but the text was a clear warning. And if Julian was really desperate, I quickly typed a message and sent it to Sarah. Julian kidnapped Eleanor. At the old warehouse. Call the police immediately, but tell them to be discreet. Then I grabbed my car keys and ran out the door. The night was pitch black as I sped down the highway toward the outskirts of the city. This road was painfully familiar. It was where I had crashed my car in my past life, and the warehouse was near the crash site. 20 minutes later, I saw the ominous silhouette of the abandoned warehouse. The area was dark, except for a single, dim light bulb swaying in the wind above the entrance. I parked my car, took a deep breath, and pushed open the iron doors. Julian, I shouted. I'm here. Let Eleanor go. A cold laugh echoed from the darkness. So noble, Caleb Shaw. The lights suddenly flashed on, blinding me. When my vision cleared, I saw Eleanor tied to a chair in the center of the warehouse. Julian stood behind her, a knife pressed her throat. Caleb, run! Eleanor screamed, her voice muffled before Julian slapped another piece of tape over her mouth. Let her go. I took a step forward. What do you want? Money? I can give you money. Julian shook his head, a sadistic grin on his face. Money? It's too late for that. Eleanor may have paid off my debts, but that was only part of the story. His eyes turned wild. Do you have any idea what I've been doing all these years? To hide from my creditors, I had to work for them. Drug trafficking, money laundering, even murder. My heart sank. The man before me was completely unhinged, filled with nothing but hatred and despair. Then what do you want? I tried to keep my voice calm, slowly moving forward. I want you both to suffer. Julian roared. I was so close to winning last time, and this time you too. You too. He pressed the knife against Eleanor's neck, drawing a thin line of blood. I want you to watch the woman you love die in front of you, just like she watched you die last time. Eleanor shook her head frantically, tears streaming down her cheeks. I noticed her wrists were raw and bloody from the ropes. She had clearly been struggling. Julian, I said, trying to distract him, you said you work for those people. Do they know you're here? Julian's expression flickered. Shut up. Don't try to play games with me. I'm just saying, I continued, inching forward. If the police catch you, do you think your bosses will just let you go? Why don't we make a deal? What kind of deal? I'll help you get out of the country, I said, looking him straight in the eye. I'll give you enough money to disappear. Julian seemed to hesitate, the knife moving slightly away from Eleanor's throat. Why should I trust you? Because I love her, I said, my gaze locked on Eleanor's. I would do anything for her. A complex emotion flickered in Eleanor's eyes. She seemed to want to say something, but could only make muffled sounds. Julian suddenly burst out laughing. How touching. So very touching. His laughter stopped abruptly. Too bad I don't believe you. He grabbed Eleanor's hair and pressed the knife to her throat again. Get on your knees, Caleb Shaw. Beg me. Without a second's hesitation, I dropped to my knees. Please, let her go. Ha ha. Julian laughed triumphantly. Look at you now. You died too quickly last time. This time, I'm going to enjoy this. In that moment of distraction, Eleanor slammed the back of her head into his nose. Julian cried out in pain, and the knife clattered to the floor. I lunged forward, landing a solid punch on Julian's jaw. He staggered back and pulled a gun from his pocket. Look out! Eleanor screamed. A shot rang out. I dodged to the side, the bullet grazing my arm, leaving a searing pain. But I didn't stop. I tackled Julian, and we wrestled for the gun. A second shot, this one hitting the ceiling. We rolled on the ground, fighting for control of the weapon. Julian was stronger than me and was slowly gaining the upper hand, the barrel of the gun inching toward my head. Bang! Another gunshot, but this time it wasn't from Julian's gun. His body went rigid. He slowly looked down at the blood blossoming on his chest, then collapsed. In the warehouse doorway, Eleanor stood with a police-issue handgun, her hands shaking but her gaze steady. While Julian and I were fighting, she had managed to break free from her ropes, grab the knife Julian had dropped, and cut the bonds on her feet. The sound of sirens grew closer. Eleanor dropped the gun and rushed to my side. "You're hurt." "It's just a scratch," I said, taking her hand. "Are you okay?" The cut on her neck was shallow, but the rope burns on her wrists were brutal. I gently peeled the tape from her mouth, and she immediately collapsed into my arms, shaking. I thought I was going to lose you again." She sobbed. I held her tight. "You won't. We're going to be okay this time." The police and paramedics arrived quickly. Julian was pronounced dead at the scene. Eleanor and I were taken to the hospital to be checked out. In the hospital corridor, Eleanor leaned against my shoulder, her voice filled with exhaustion. "It's over. It's really over." I kissed her hair. "Yes, it's all in the past now." "Caleb," she said, suddenly looking up at me, "there's something I never told you. About last time." I took her hand. "You can tell me if you want, but you don't have to." "No, you deserve to know," Eleanor said, taking a deep breath. "After you died, I spent 3 months investigating. I didn't just find the proof of Julian planning the car crash. I found more." Her voice began to tremble. "I found out he had drugged my tea once, trying to assault me, and he took pictures to blackmail me." The blood in my veins ran cold. "What?" "It was the week before you died," Eleanor said, her eyes filled with tears. "At the time, I thought I had just had too much to drink. When I woke up, he acted like nothing had happened. I thought I was just being paranoid." I pulled her into a tight hug, my heart aching so much I couldn't speak. Our last fight had been because I had accused Julian of having ulterior motives with her, and she had accused me of being paranoid and insecure. "I'm so sorry. I should have pushed harder." My voice was choked. "It's not your fault." Eleanor shook her head. "I was the one who was blind. It wasn't until after you died that I found the photos he had secretly taken. Only then did he admit to drugging me." I finally understood why the reborn Eleanor had been so ruthless with Julian. It wasn't just about atoning for her mistakes with me. It was because she had learned the truth about the monster he really was. "It's all in the past," I said, stroking her back. "He can't hurt us anymore." Eleanor nodded, resting her head on my chest. "You know, Caleb, in my last moments, as I was holding your ashes, my only wish was that I could have a do-over. I never thought it would actually happen." Something clicked in my mind. Me too. In the last second before the crash, all I could think about was you. We looked at each other and smiled, as if a great cosmic mystery had finally been solved. "Let's go home," I said, standing up and holding out my hand. Eleanor placed her hand in mine, her eyes filled with trust and love. "Okay, let's go home." 1 year later, I stood in front of the mirror, adjusting my tie. Eleanor came up behind me and wrapped her arms around my waist, resting her chin on my shoulder. "Nervous?" "A little," I admitted. "First solo exhibition. I'm worried it's going to be a disaster." Eleanor turned me around to face her and fix my tie. "You're the winner of the Asian Emerging Architect Award. Have some confidence." So much had changed in a year. After Julian's death, Eleanor had taken complete control of Vance Enterprises, and the company was thriving. My own studio was also flourishing. The Riverbend project had won numerous accolades, and today was the opening of my first solo exhibition. "By the way, I have a gift for you," Eleanor said with a mysterious smile, pulling a small box from her pocket. I opened it. Inside was a pair of elegant cufflinks, engraved with ENC. "They're just like the ones I gave you," I said, surprised. I had given her a similar pair in college, but they had been lost somewhere along the way. "I had them remade," Eleanor said, fastening one to my cuff. "This time, I'm not losing anything that reminds me of you." I leaned in to kiss her, but she gently pushed me away. "Don't mess up my lipstick." Eleanor was wearing a loose, navy blue dress today, much simpler than her usual attire, but she was still stunning. She had traded her high heels and power suits for more comfortable clothes 3 months ago, when we found out she was pregnant. "It's time. Let's go," she said, grabbing her purse. A long line had already formed outside the gallery. Sarah was greeting guests and rushed over when she saw us. "Ms. Vance, Mr. Shaw, everything is ready." In the center of the gallery was the scale model of my proudest work, the Riverbend project. The walls were covered with design sketches and project photos. Eleanor stood by my side, proudly introducing her genius husband to the guests. Mr. Shaw, a reporter approached me. Your design style is so unique. Can you tell us about your source of inspiration? I looked across the room at Eleanor. She was smiling and chatting with a guest, the sunlight from the window illuminating her like a painting. My wife, I said softly. She is the source of all my inspiration. The reporter followed my gaze and smiled knowingly. I hear you were college sweethearts. You're a very enviable couple. Yes, from college until now, across 2 lifetimes, we had finally learned how to truly love each other. After the exhibition, Eleanor suggested we go somewhere. She drove me to a road on the outskirts of the city, the exact spot where I'd crashed my car and where the warehouse was located. Why are we here? I asked, a little uneasy. Eleanor parked the car and took my hand, leading me to the side of the road. Look, the dangerous stretch of road had been completely rebuilt. The sharp curve had been straightened, sturdy guardrails had been installed, and new streetlights and warning signs lined the road. I funded the renovation of this road, Eleanor said softly. No one will ever have an accident here again. A warmth spread through my chest. This was her way of commemorating our new life. Suddenly, Eleanor dropped to one knee and pulled a ring out of her pocket. Caleb Shaw, I didn't love you right in our last life. This time, I want to propose to you all over again. Will you marry me again? My eyes welled up. I pulled her to her feet. I should be the one proposing to you. That doesn't matter, she said, slipping the ring onto my finger. What matters is that this time, we finally learned to cherish each other. I held her tight and whispered in her ear, I will. 1,000,000 times I will. Back home, Eleanor leaned against the sofa, exhausted. The pregnancy made her tired easily, but she still insisted on working until the last possible moment. Want some water? I handed her a glass. She took the glass, then suddenly frowned and clutched her stomach. Oh, what is it? I asked, immediately concerned. Eleanor looked up, her eyes sparkling with delight. The baby kicked me. I quickly knelt down and pressed my ear to her belly. Sure enough, I felt a tiny, gentle thump against my ear. He's so active, I said with a laugh. Must take after you. I hope he has your eyes, Eleanor said, stroking my face. You have the best smile. Outside, the sun was setting, filling the living room with a golden light. Eleanor leaned against me, and we looked at the large wedding photo on the wall, one we had retaken after our rebirth. In it, we were both smiling brilliantly, our eyes full of hope for the future. Caleb, Eleanor said suddenly, I want to start a charitable foundation to help families affected by tragic accidents. My heart warmed. That's a great idea. How about we call it the Second Chance Foundation? Perfect, she smiled, kissing my chin. Late that night, Eleanor was asleep in my arms. I gently placed a hand on her slightly rounded belly, feeling the tiny life moving within. The tragedy of our past life had been completely rewritten. This time, we would watch our child grow up together, we would grow old together, and we would never again let misunderstandings and suspicion pull us apart. Rebirth had given us a second chance, and love had helped us seize it. Outside, a shooting star streaked across the night sky. I closed my eyes and made a silent wish. May this life be free of regrets.